Morning, everyone. I'm out here at the dam in Singapore here near the Coney Island. And I ran out here this morning because I was originally going to go to somewhere else, Changi Business Park, because there's some birds out there, some migratory birds that don't come around very often that guys have been shooting. So, but I saw the sunrise and it looks like it was going to be pretty beautiful. So I came on out here, and so I just want to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing here. This is my EM5 Mark II, and I have my 12 to 35 Panaleica, or I'm sorry, it's just a Lumix lens, a very good lens, and I have my Nisi filter system on here. Right now I just have the polarizer on. But so here's what I'm doing. I'm taking a long exposure here, and then I'm taking a couple of other shorter exposures. So my plan is to blend them together, because what I like to do a lot of times is I don't always like the really smooth water, and sometimes I like to have a little bit of texture in that water. So just a little tip here as far as how I do that. Now right now I just have the actual polarizer on there, but I did have a 10 stop. So I put my 10 stop filter on there. I put it at f14 because I'm not really everything. It can be I want everything in focus. It doesn't have to be super sharp. It's a long exposure. And so I put on f14 and took the shot because that gave me the shutter speed I wanted at about 15 seconds. So I took that shot at 15 seconds and I got a pretty smooth water, which I'll show on here, but I'm not sure. It's with the glare and everything, it's kind of hard to see. But anyway, it's really hard to see. You can see me. But anyway, I'll show you. I'll pop it up on the screen. Anyway, took a long exposure and got nice smooth water on that, and the clouds are just beautiful, not moving too much, so the long exposure isn't moving the clouds. But you can see my scenery here, and I have this, this pier, this little, not pier, but little fence going out here. I'm getting in the exposure, just gives it a little bit of foreground interest. Have these rocks down here, and then clouds up here. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking an exposure. Oh man, some bugs are biting out here. Taking an exposure at 1 second, and then I did 1.3. So, and then I did 1.6. So I did all these different exposures just to kind of see if I could get the water. It was actually some beautiful, just kind of ripples coming in. And it looked really nice, so I want to get a little bit of that texture in the water. But that gives me, the reason I do it that way is that gives me, when I get home and I look, it's hard to see on the back of the camera, so when I get home and I look at it, I can look to see what I like the best. And if I like a little bit of texture in the water, then I'll go ahead and I can add those other exposures that I had put in there to give me that texture there that I want in that water. So anyway, that's what I did. So those exposures, I just kept it at f14. I'm sorry, I went down to all the way down to I think f5.6 just to change my settings, and then I just kept and I took off the 10 stop filter because I had a Nisi 10 stop on there to give me my 15 seconds. Took the filter off to get my shutter speeds, but I kept the polarizer on just to kind of eliminate some of that glare that's coming off the water. And then I also put some of the glare on there. It just depends on what I see and what I want. And then, like I said, I can go into Photoshop and just blend those together, and then I can get the ripples where I like them and how much I want. So that's the way I do it. So it works out well for me, and so just wanted to kind of throw that tip.
Sometimes we act like a fool, not aware we're covering ghosts. Sometimes we try to be cool, Not being givers, only takers. Stop for a minute. Stop and breathe for a minute. Don't get over your head, try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute. Who you wanna be for a minute. Don't get over your head, you're like everyone else on here. You could gain from being a bit nicer. Know when to talk and when to shut your mouth. You're so moody, always such
All right, back here at the office now. So I just wanted to show you what I was out at the Coney Island near the dam here. As you can see from this photo here, this is a railing and concrete structure that comes out from where the dam is right to the right there and back a little bit. But kind of wanted to show you what I do on some of my long exposures. This is a good spot for long exposures. You usually get a good shot of the sunrise. And as you can see, I took a very long exposure here, 50-second exposure. Well, not very long, but 50 seconds, smoothed out everything. And then I also took a shot here where it's only a 1/20th of a second. And so what I like to do is I will, depending on how I want my look, I can blend those. Just make sure I didn't crop anything. I can blend those in Photoshop to get, if I want to add any texture to the water. And so sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but it's the exact same picture, focal length, everything. And so what were we at? 22 millimeters. This was taken with my Lumix G Vario 12-35 f2.8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open these as layers in Photoshop. So go to Photo, Edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Just takes a second for these to load up here. And this is one of those things where it's just personal taste. I just haven't decided yet what I like the best. If I want a little texture, sometimes I end up leaving the texture and sometimes I take the texture out. One nice thing about, these programs and things and all the digital age, I guess, is you can make the changes and then change the changes and then change back the changes or not save the changes. Okay, so we have our picture. We have our picture here on the top that that is the main picture here. And then I have my background here, which I'm going to use for the texture in the water. Now, as you can see, right now, they're quite a bit different in the coloring and exposure and all that, but I'm not worried about that right now. So all I want to do right now is make a mask, put a white, so white reveals, black conceals, right? So now what I want to do is go to my brush tool, make sure I'm in the black. Now, here's the key. Take this opacity down to about 50%. And again, it's personal preference. You get to play around with a little bit, but I've always found 50% to be pretty good. Flow at 6% is fine. You could go anywhere between 5 and 10 really it'll work fine. So I put my mask on here. I have my black, so I'm going to start revealing or concealing some of this and showing some of the other background I have here. So, and you could do this the other way around if you wanted, but you could put the bottom picture on the top, put the mask, do Control I, invert the mask, make it all concealed, and then slowly reveal some of that. But anyway, so we're just going to go here and we're just going to start to paint some of that texture. You see it coming through there? It's not a lot. Just a tad. Nice and easy. Now the railing in both pictures is dark, so it won't really affect the railing too much, so you can paint right over that. If it does, we can always darken it down. Put a little bit of texture. Now to me, I really like that. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes it just depends on my mood, what I thought I wanted the picture to look like. Because sometimes I really do like the just the flat, smoothed out water. But here, a little bit of texture. And I just find rather than playing around with shutter speed all day and trying to get something like that, which you probably would almost be impossible to do, to me, this is the best way to do it. Now, as you can see on here, it's very light. I mean, it's very light. I just go, like I said, I have it at 50% opacity, 6% flow, very light, very subtle. And I just like that little bit of texture in there. Really, to me, it just adds so much to the photo. This particular photo. Like I said, it depends on my mood. Not that I don't like the other photo, but it kind of then and also then we can go here, and you could play around a little bit if you wanted to with the curves, and you can see how that would change if you want to brighten up that texture, darken that texture, so you still have a little bit of, because you're only dealing with 50%, so it's not changing it too much. But you can go in and darken it down or brighten it up. So it depends on what you want to do. For me, on this one, I'm just going to delete that layer because I think this, to me, looks perfect. Smoothed out, but like I said, got a little bit of texture in there, and so that's how I do it. Anyway. So those two photos in there, just file now. We're going to save it. Head back into now. So there we go. So now I have my TIFF saved as a TIFF file. And it also saves my rating on that photo. So now I have this photo, which is my 1/20th of a second exposure, f8 at ISO 200. Then I have my 50-second exposure, f14. And I just put it up to f14 to get my 50-second exposure because I did not have the filters on at this point. Sorry, I lost the word for a second, but did not have filters on, so I went up to f14 to get my 50-second exposure. So that's with the water completely flattened, pretty smoothed out pretty much. Not much texture. And then, as I showed you, I used those two photos to come up with that. So, because this one's a little bit lighter, so it lightened it up just a little bit, not much. See the difference here? Lightened it up a little bit, but added that little bit of texture in there. So, yeah, that's how I do it. Anyway, that's my tip for today. I hope that'll help you with something, the way you can use it. I just came up by it by accident one day, but really liked the look. So it's just another tool you can use if you want to use if you want to get that real smooth look, but then you get home and you're just like, maybe that's too smooth, or it's not what I want. I want a little bit of texture in there. And like I said, trying to get that through the shutter speed, it's almost impossible to get that type of look through with the shutter speed. So to me, this is the best way to do it. So again, quickly, just put these both into Photoshop, open as layers in Photoshop, and put the layer mask on. And it just depends on which one you want to have on the top, what type of layer mask. I use the white layer mask to reveal everything, and then I just slowly brush in with the black. I just slowly brush in that texture, and I put that at you can obviously adjust the opacity to what you think, but I find 50% to be pretty spot on for me. But depending if you want more texture, less texture, you can mess with that opacity level, and then also with the flow level. But like I said, usually I use a flow anywhere between 5 and 10%. And also, I don't think I mentioned, but please use the soft brush. Much better flow, much better look with the soft brush. So, all right, thank you. Take care.